Good morning. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. On the way to his execution, Jan Hus is thought to have said, "You are now going to burn a goose, but in a century you will have a swan which you can neither roast nor boil." It's a clever bit of wordplay, because in the Czech language, the name Hus means goose. It's also a clever bit of prophecy, because in many, many ways, Huss advocated for many things that became part of the Protestant Reformation. And about 100 years after Huss's death, a new reformer came along named Martin Luther, who couldn't be silenced. This year I'm taking a week each month and highlighting some of the men and women the church remembers and commemorates during that month. It's not that these folks are any more holy than any of us. It's that we lift up their lives of bold witness to the faith to inspire us in our own witness to our faith. They serve as examples to inspire and embolden us. Today we want to begin with one of the most important persons you have probably never heard about, Jan Hus. It is really hard to overestimate the influence Hus had on our society, if in no other way than his strong influence on Martin Luther. Hus was born in the late 1300s and was a good student, supporting himself, barely, by singing as a choir boy while studying for his degree in theology. He was ordained in 1400 and served in different churches in Bohemia, which later became Czechoslovakia, as a preacher and also as a rector of the university. As he continued to study, he was deeply impressed with the teachings of John Wycliffe, an early reformer in England. In that day, the Roman Catholic Church offered only the bread to the congregations during communion, but Hus began offering both bread and wine. What's more, in his church he began preaching in the Czech language instead of the traditional Latin, giving the congregation words about faith they could understand. As time moved along, these reformers began to spread to other churches as well. Eventually, Hus became disillusioned by the general corruption and other abuses within the Roman Church, and his sermons became more and more pointed on these issues until he was excommunicated for not answering a summons to Rome to defend himself. Now, perhaps to understand what was going on at the time Hus was preaching, you need to know that the whole Roman Catholic Church was in upheaval. At this time, there were schisms aplenty, so much so that there were 3 popes, all claiming to be the true pope. They each claimed authority, and no one really knew who had it. Over time, Hus offended most of his friends, and any church leaders who may have supported him were the very folks he was preaching against. Finally, he was summoned to the Council of Constance in 1414 and promised safe conduct from and back to his home, even if he were convicted. He went in November and languished in a cell until he was finally called before the council in June. All of a sudden, the council lost all legal authority when the Pope who had sanctioned it fled from the council, hoping his absence would make the council illegitimate. The other popes had refused to attend in the first place. The council continued to meet, however, and after Hus refused to recant articles that had been falsely attributed to him, he was condemned to death with his execution scheduled for that afternoon. He was burned at the stake while praying Kyrie eleison, or Lord, have mercy. One of his followers, Jerome of Prague, continued his work and was executed 1 year later. However, the movement Hus started continued to spread from congregation to congregation and led to reforms not only in the church in Bohemia, but also in society, against abuses from landlords, corruption in secular authority, and in the power of the church. Finally, some of these early reformers even moved to having only two sacraments, baptism and Holy Communion. Huss's tradition had major influence on the Moravian Church, and as I said before, Luther was shaped by Huss's reforms too. There are some who suggest that Huss failed and Luther succeeded in largely the same things, mostly because of the invention of the printing press, which happened between their lives. There was no press when Huss lived. Because the press had been invented by Luther's time, his ideas could be spread more widely and not silenced. The movement Huss started was a precursor to the Reformation. The goose led to the swan, which leads to us. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.